Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Learning Sound and Synthesis Spotlight Series interview. I'm here today with Michael Roth, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be talking about how Michael, who is a very talented classical composer of all kinds of different music, is expanding his musical vocabulary to include modular synthesizers, semi-modular synths. And today is really special because we're not only going to have a little chat, but we're also going to be listening to the premiere of a new piece of music that you have recently composed. So
I
there's a
com
lot in
I com
store.
I composed it for you, Sarah. So,
Composed it for this event right
yeah,
here, which
yeah,
is
for
so
this
great.
event. Right.
Well, thank you for being here. Can you start us off with a brief introduction to who you are and what you do?
Although I guess it's true, I'm a classical composer. Nobody's ever introduced me that way before. So,
Oh,
but it's fine, you know. No, I'm really just an old rock and roll boy who has pretensions towards classical thinking. But no, I've been a composer and a musician for 800 years. I've done a lot of work in theater and sound design in theater.
Mhm.
And I know we want to chat about that briefly, and that's great. I am from New York originally. This is LA. This is Santa Monica. The ocean's there. Uh, and I write a lot of music, and I think I have enough monitors and keyboards here to say that I mean it. So
Yes,
so
that's the true
yeah,
sign of it.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit about why modular synths or synthesis in general was something that piqued your interest as someone who clearly already had an established, process and practice as a composer?
Right. Well, I'm part of an organization that I don't think uh, has been brought up in any of the your classes or anything, which is a group called the Theatrical Sound Designers and Composers Association. That's TSDCA, and we formed about 8 years ago when the Tony Award for Sound Design was canceled.
Mm.
And then a bunch of us kind of nationwide, and this was pre-Zoom, pre-doing this as it every day, which is what we do now, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, Basically, we started protesting against that because it's it's almost hard to imagine a piece of theater now without sound design of some kind or sound design and composition. So we formed out of that, and then during the pandemic, I hosted a bunch of salons, basically to encourage sound designers and composers to keep writing and composing, because you don't need to compose only because somebody tells you to. You should compose because you feel like it.
Mm.
And uh, anyway, and then I noticed that a number of sound designers were would like have these wooden boxes in their studio, and they'd have like these things there. And I don't have that here. In fact, I still don't have that here. But I would say, what's that? And then they'd be kind of connecting things. And then, Sarah, I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of ubiquitous on the web. You're kind of there all the time. So I kind of see your little stuff posting around in Facebook. And I said, well, and we have a lot of mutual friends. So
Mhm.
from Cal Arts and things like that. So I said, well, maybe I should just dive into this, and then wrote to you. And for all you kids out there, once you join in Sarah's gang, you're there forever. So it's not like you only have 6 months and you're done. You
Yeah,
can,
let me clarify, that's not like in a
yeah,
scary way. It's not like you're stuck
yeah,
there forever.
right, right.
You're
Well,
invited to.
it's a little no, it's fine. You can be intimidated forever, and anyway, no, and because I said I look, I'm going to be busy, so how much I can actually devote
Right,
right now.
right.
And indeed, I became really busy, but I still kept going. So
Yeah,
that's sort of what brought it, is seeing that people were actually doing it and basically trying to figure it out, and
right.
stuff. So
Yeah, great. One of the things that we were talking a little bit about in our correspondences before this live stream was the fact that you were so busy, and so what you would do is come in and learn a little bit of something you know,
Hmm.
1% of what you could know about a particular topic, and then you would just run with it and sort of play with it for a while in your own music. And I know that
Right.
um, you've created a lot of pieces, or at least a couple things that way, right? Can you
Right.
talk a little
Well.
bit about?
Um. One thing that I know you mentioned, and you guys were gracious enough to post a slightly out of focus picture, but I did I did a really interesting. I've done a couple of gigs with Al Pacino,
Mhm.
and um, that started. I wrote some string music for this thing that he did with Friends, Romans, Countrymen from Julius Caesar. Just a slight preamble. Now that I know him really pretty well, he really is an old experimental theater guy
Mhm.
from the Lower East Side in New York and the Bronx. When he was 19, he was roommates with Martin Sheen, which is crazy to imagine, right? And he was with the Living Theater and a lot of sort of outside work in theater who loved Shakespeare. Then he became a movie star.
Mhm.
But that part of him that is experimental and Shakespearean is still there, and he's 83. God
Mhm.
bless him, and he's a rocker. So when he's not doing anything else, he'd rather work on Shakespeare in some crazy way. So which is really, and it's really
Amazing.
him, it's like
Yeah.
he doesn't have to do this at all, right?
Right.
So what when the actor strike started in the fall, that was around when I was in your cohort,
Yeah.
and Al said, well, let's get some actors together and maybe do some readings of Richard III and bring them around to high schools, and sort of and then he said, and Michael, you can just be there and you can improvise a score. And I said, okay. And he we had no rehearsals and we had no director. It was just all about him and about 10 other actors and me off to the side, and eventually I added a cellist, but I never got one note about what to do, when to do it, or anything. The one thing that he said that he and I talked about was Richard III is a play about political corruption, and Richard talks to the audience the whole time.
Mm.
So I said, so I should underscore you because you're talking to us, and that's a good place to sort of dive in. So I had this laptop I'm talking to now. I had is Pro Tool. I had a Pro Tools kind of session there with just a lot of stuff in it, and then I had a piano over here that was open, so I can hit the insides with mallets, and I prepared a certain section of it. And then I had a drum and a small synthesizer, and then I was getting into VCV rack, so I said, well, I should just try to put that into this universe somehow.
Sure.
Um, and so I did. So I would open up VCV Rack, the and I did put it into about 4 or 5 of our presentations. Had you been there, Sarah, you would have said, "Well, come on, you could do more than that." I would say, "Yeah, I know, but it's a little nerve wracking." Uh, so, but I did say I should open up this universe into it too. It's just hard to do live when the principal live thing is Al Pacino. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And I have to bounce off him. Go ahead.
Of
Sorry.
course. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know if I understand what you're saying. It was like, oh, you could do more. There's always you could do. But what I
Yeah.
think is so amazing about your story, and the reason why I wanted you to share this with for people, is that
Yeah.
you didn't let the fact that you were just taking your first steps into VCV Rack stop you
Sure.
from bringing it into this really cool collaboration.
Right. Right.
Whereas a lot of people, probably would. They'd be like, oh, well, I'm not an expert enough in this yet. Or,
Sure.
so you
Sure.
were like, well, let's do something simple. Let's keep it light. Let's just dip our toe in here and bring it in. And as a
Right.
result, you're like, you're probably learning a lot more about it as you go, and you're making some cool sounds. I think that's just a really
Right.
inspiring thing to remember, that we
Right.
don't need to be a PhD in whatever tool we're working in order to
No. Yeah. No. That
do really
I
interesting
think
things
that's
with it.
right.
Yeah.
Right. No. Clearly, that's right. I think the only thing that was um, intimidating isn't the right word, but it was inconvenient to have both of these things on my laptop.
Sure.
right?
Fair enough.
Because I'm also really paying attention to the script and to what's going on, and in fact, as I've even said to you, I got to the point where I would say 70% of what I did was finally on the inside of the piano, and because
Yeah.
it was acoustic and so immediately responsive and all
Right.
that. The part two of this, though, I would say, is that when you invited me to chat with you, and I said, okay, I better compose something. Um, um, Two things happened, and I'll start with the second one. Was This is around the time of your CD release,
Hmm.
and you started talking about the Strega, which I didn't know what that was, uh, but I kind of watched your video about it, and I said, well, now that's really interesting. And as you know, the Strega is a tiny little thing. It's right over here. You can pick it up in your hands and throw it across the room if you want to. It's not a big thing.
Right.
But the fact that it's independent and that it's tactile, that I
Right.
can turn a knob now and make noise, is great. So that's I think we'll be doing some more Richard Third readings in the late spring, possibly. There's rumors to that effect. I don't know. It's up to him. But
Hmm.
but I imagine the Strega, because it's just its own entity that can float free above everything, is much more conducive to bringing into that world.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
so it's just an easy manipulating thing, and it's not virtual. It's not in my computer.
Right.
So that's
Much more
that's very
easy
nice.
to kind of
Yeah,
interact with it in the moment. What was the
yeah,
other thing?
that
The Strega. You mentioned there were two things.
two things. Well, I am gonna shift, and okay. So then there's this thing.
Aha. Right.
Aha. What's that? Other than something that's boxing me into a corner and making me shift around nervously. Yeah, and you're seeing a lot of Santa Monica sun. So anyway, so I'm friends with John Schneider and other people with the uh, uh, LA Parch Ensemble. You probably know
Hmm.
some of those guys too.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
so and I'm bit by bit composing something for them. And then one day, John called and said, "We have a spare chromalodion." Nobody ever asks you that question. Nope, no, nope, nobody ever says, "I have a spare chromalodion that I can lend you." Uh, and would you like to have it for a while? And I said, sure. Now, for the people who don't know Harry Parch, that's a whole topic. But he was, among other things, micro, not microtonal, micro. Oh God, more notes in an octave. You know what I mean? I'm blanking on the word, but you know what I mean. That it was. God, this is embarrassing. You're only interviewing me, but
I I mean, I think saying microtonal
yeah,
or
yeah. I
basically
mean,
saying it's not his
it
instruments weren't.
yeah, it is microtonal. It's so in his octave on this thing, it's based. This is an old pump organ from 1906 that was then rereaded
Mhm.
to have about 30 notes in an octave, in what we would
Right.
call an octave.
Right.
And I said, well, I better compose something for this too. So then, and this is all within a few weeks of you contacting me. So I said,
Mhm.
well, I think I should compose something for this. And at that time, BCB rack, and see what that is, because I should somehow combine 1906 technology.
Right.
It's in fact a pump organ. There's no MIDI, nothing on this thing.
Mhm.
Um, and modular synthesis.
Right.
So that's what I did. Have you written anything for something like Chromalodion at all? Have you done anything like that? Or
I would
I mean,
love to. I'm just gonna throw
yeah,
that out to the universe.
yeah,
Honestly, any of Parch's instruments, they're all so inspiring to me, and
th-
it's
th-
such a
right,
fascinating sound world. I would
yeah,
I would absolutely welcome with open arms any opportunity.
yeah. No, I mean, no, it's great, and they're so beautiful.
Yes.
really
Beautiful to
beautiful.
look at as well. Yeah,
Right,
just
right.
stunning. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they sound like $1 million, though he never had $1 million. But they're just beautiful. So I guess we should sort of introduce the piece that's
Please,
coming up.
yeah,
All right.
let's take a listen or talk a little bit about it, then we'll take a listen.
I'll give it a little bit of context. So uh, back when I was doing this in November, the Hex Ensemble, the vocal ensemble here, premiered a piece of mine, and I think you know some of those guys too. They're out of Cal Arts too. Like Fahad is out of Cal Arts and things like that. Anyway, and it's a piece called Kyrie Mercy Anna M, and it's a reflection on the work of Anna Mendieta and her rather stunning life and tragic elements in it. I'll keep it that obtuse because
Hmm.
I will encourage everyone to just look into her,
Hmm.
and you'll see what it's about. So I wrote a motet that I'd actually done the first version of with my friend Alice Ripley, who's an actress and a songwriter, and that was premiered in November. Um, and she watched a rehearsal. She's in New York, and then talking about it with Alice. Anna's husband is Carl Andre, who's also an artist. He just died a few months ago. She died about 40 years ago under questionable circumstances. Okay, so she said we should write something for Carl to say. Carl should have a
Hmm.
response to this. I'll just say that Carl feels a certain amount of guilt and something about whatever this is. I'm being purposely a little mysterious. So I said, that's a good idea. So I think I should write a piece for a singer, for the Chromelodian. And then I bought myself a Strega. And that's what I did. It's really
Yeah.
for, I've written for singers before, but I've never written for this. And finale doesn't work with this. Everything there's what I wrote. It's in pencil,
Uh-huh.
you know, and
And
and then
Strega.
yeah, and Strega, and then I asked my friend Scott Graft if you would take a crack at it, and because the first piece, like your mass to some extent, is the first piece for Anna was a Kyrie. I said, well, this should be somehow based in liturgy, but then should go off.
Sure.
And so it's a lacrimosa, which is mourning.
Right.
But there's other stuff in it too. So
Okay,
anyway,
great. Okay, well, let's
so
take a why don't we take a listen?
yeah,
And I think for pretty much everyone, this will be the first time they're hearing a piece for singer and Chromelodian and Strega. I think I can confidently say that because these
I think
instrument combinations would not be something you
right,
would just stumble across. All
right.
right, I'll pull this up here and we'll take a listen. Maybe what I'll do is put us into
Ingemisco tamquam reus, ingemisco tamquam reus, curvarum et votus meus. Eus I groan like a guilty windowsill. Nothing will kneel in autumn remanebit. Nothing will remain. Fire and flame, all the same. Supplicanti, pace Deus. Supplicanti, face down in a warming well, face down. How gracefully she fell. She fell. The sky, the windowsills, the night, the sky, and nothing will. Dies irae
Beautiful. What a journey, and what a performance too.
Yeah, he's pretty great. It was distorting a little bit on my end here, so I'm hoping that out in the real world it wasn't.
Either way, what I'll do here is I'll send bear with me one moment. What I'll do is I'll grab the link so that people can watch this on their own speakers or headphones and revisit it in their own time. Sometimes, we do our best with live streaming, but sometimes things get a little compressed and a little funky. So I'll put the link in there for people so you can enjoy that again.
Yeah,
in its full.
the Strega especially is doing all sorts of things that I imagine streaming goes, what are you doing, and stops it, but
on my end it sounded beautiful, but
okay, well that's
but yeah, definitely give it a listen, folks, for sure. Well,
but it's an odd little not day at the beach. It's obviously got somebody dealing with some pain and guilt and a windowsill. So
well, it was a really incredible. I mean, I thought hearing these sound worlds together was so compelling. It's so unusual, and the Strega played a beautiful role. So congrats.
And one of the things about writing the microtonal stuff with the Chromelodian, when I first wrote it and then recorded it and started playing with it, adding a synthesizer in any way was not working, because it's not in tune with it. They're not in tune with each other. What really appeals to me about the Strega, I have a lot of instruments here that can give me a tone, that I can manipulate, and VCV Rack does that very well. This automatically puts you in a noise place, and that's, I don't have any instrument that does that right off the bat. So and that's much more compelling to me as a sound source.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
right.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
And congrats. And,
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's um, composed a piece specifically for, maybe that's happened actually in the past. I shouldn't say never.
Yeah.
Um, but thank you. Yeah, really, really
Sure.
beautiful. So I'm curious to kind of wrap our conversation up and go back to some of the things we were talking about at the beginning. I'm curious
Mhm.
if there's any advice that you could offer someone who maybe is a composer of classical music or whatever, a songwriter, whatever they might be, who's kind
Yeah.
of curious about getting into working with synthesizers, modular synths.
Yeah. I
What do
mean,
you think?
just to say this, yeah, I am a classical composer, but I really am an old songwriter,
Sure.
and because I think I also work a lot with Randy Newman, and so that's the only kind of music I can play is stuff like that. But yes, I've thought I was anticipating this question, Sarah, because I
Oh,
think
good.
your no your philosophy about how to encourage people is, I think, very generous of you and very supportive, and I think that's great. I'll I'll throw my 2 cents at it. Um, that Beckett has had a profound influence on me. I've composed a piece with his words. I have 2 letters from Samuel Beckett right over there. So it and uh, what Beckett says is that you don't know how to express, you don't know what to express, you don't know why you're expressing it, you don't know how to express it, you don't know when to express it, but you feel an obligation to.
Hmm.
And those are sort of the words that come back to me often, that the only reason to do this is because for some reason, rational or irrational or financially codependent or not, you know, you do it because you feel an obligation to say what's on your mind. And I don't ever feel that the fact that I'm not a master of VCV rack is anything that like stops me, because I'm not a master of anything. You don't write your last piece and say, well, that's it, I'm done, I've said it. I think the best you can aim for is you maybe get about 4 or 5 notes that are really pretty good, and the rest, who knows. So I'm going to say one more philosophical thing, that whenever I talk about this is what goes through my head, Sarah. So you'll either say I'm never talking to him again, or I'll go to him with him to a ball game. When I was a little kid, I was watching this World Series game, and the Boston Red Sox were playing. I was 5. I don't know.
Mhm.
And I'm from New York, but it was the Red Sox. And there was this ball hit to the center fielder, and clearly the sun was in his eyes, but somehow he caught it. And then afterwards, and I remember this, and this is 8 million years ago that I remember this. He said in an interview afterwards, he said, they said, well, how did you catch that ball? Because the sun was in your eyes the whole time. What did you do? And he said, well, I heard the ball hit, and I ran to where I thought it was, and I looked up, and all I could see was the sun. So I just held up my glove, and it was still, and I would put up the glove, and it would hide the sun, but I couldn't see the ball. And I'd bring down the glove, and I could kind of see the sun, but I couldn't see the ball. But finally, I reached up and put my glove where I thought the ball would be, and I caught it.
Mhm.
And I said, yeah, as the years go by, you put your efforts towards where you think the good note's going to be, and hopefully you catch it. And sometimes you don't, but you don't know that.
Right.
You never know that. So I think it's just more about, just keep it going, just keep working.
Yeah.
You're not done until you're done. And then when you're done, you don't know what anybody's going to say because you're done. right?
Right.
So that's all, folks. So you're done. So
That's beautiful. That's beautiful advice for getting started with modular synthesis and honestly just for life in general, I think. Just
yeah, yeah,
keep it going, do what you can do,
right.
and
And it's up to you. Whatever it's this isn't unlike a baseball game. This isn't a horse race. You're not
mm,
writing a piece to be better than me. You're writing a piece because you have an obligation to express something. So do
yeah,
I. Why did I write that crazy song? It's not because kids are going to dance to it at high school. That's not going to happen. I mean, if it does, what an interesting universe. But I wrote it because
yeah,
I said, okay, okay, big guy, you're a composer. You better compose something, right? And that's what you do every day, one way or another.
right,
You better write something, or else
right.
what are you doing, right? But I
Well,
appreciate your philosophy about that, Sarah.
well, thank you. I appreciate you're a wonderful storyteller, and I think it's there's a lot of people out there who are probably going to really appreciate or are appreciating what you're sharing because it's
Mhm.
it's very relatable. We don't always know even where the target is or what direction we're going, but there's something really wonderful to be said about just showing up for your art every day,
Yeah,
and taking a step even though it's probably could be better. There probably could be more patch cables. It probably could be more complicated. Of course, I still feel that way, but that's
right,
not really
right.
the point. The point is
Yeah,
about showing up, doing the thing, listening really deeply, expressing yourself in the way that you want, rinse
right.
and repeat. And there we
Yeah,
go.
and rinse and repeat. And when we redo this conversation for the real, when the cameras are really on, we'll do it even better. Oh no! Oh, this is it. Okay, sorry.
Oh,
Uh,
whoops. Here we
yeah.
go.
Oh, I
Oh,
didn't
you're
know.
funny. Yeah, this was just a really good rehearsal. I want to take one quick second to put a URL up on the screen, which is www.soundandsynthesis.com. Let me put this here. Okay, there we go. That's a
There you go.
place that anyone who is curious about learning modular synthesis, learning sound design, uh, learning how to work with electronic instruments like we've been talking about, you can go there and add your name to the wait list for my class, Learning Sound and Synthesis. I run it 2 times a year. The next round will be opening in late August. And as Michael mentioned, once you enroll, there's no urgent need to work through the class. Once you enroll, you're in the community, you can take your time. If you're like Michael and you get really busy with things, like all of us do, you don't have to panic because the class is there for you to go through at your own pace, even if that takes you years. There are many students who go through the class over the course of years, and everyone's always welcome back. Um, so if you have questions about what this class involves, what you'll learn, who it's the right fit for, I would encourage you to just send me a message anytime. Let me know what your goals are, maybe what you want to be doing, in 6 or 12 months musically, and I'll let you know if I feel like it's the right fit for you and we can take it from there. Um, I think that that's it for today, though. Is there
Yeah.
any I always like to just do one final volley back to the guest. So is there anything final you want to say before we say goodbye to everyone?
It's a hell of a world out there. Try to change it. You
I
know?
love
So Brecht said change the world. It needs it. Uh,
Yeah.
he was right.
Yeah, yeah.
We're living in a very terrifying, volatile time. Hold on to your own and
Yeah.
be as smart as you can be in everything you do.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for your
Yeah.
time. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And we'll see you in the next Learning Sound and Synthesis Spotlight interview. Bye for now. Take care.
Bye.